practical mystical experience you had, right? You would call that practical? Or was it a voice outside of you?
It was a voice outside of me.
And that's a mystical experience, not a practical mystical experience? Because it helped
A mystical experience is a very broad description. Typically, it's an experience that causes you to stop and think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And that just happened to be the one that came to mind. Because you can have them when you're asleep.
Right.
I mean, I woke up the other week, I forget which, and to aspire is to change. If you aspire towards something, you got to change what you're doing. And to me, it makes common sense, but you would be amazed at how many people don't see it that way.
So when you woke up, that thought was in your head?
Yeah. I think I made a meme out of it.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, mystical experiences are a lot more common than people would think. People are focused on these grand experiences. And those experiences are few and far between. The experience that it wasn't Jesus that had the experience, it was the people that witnessed it. When Jesus was seen conversing with Moses and Elijah. That was somebody else's mystical experience. That's something on a grand scale. And that's what people expect. Another one, Jesus is in the desert and the devil tempts him. That's a grand experience. However, people neglect the little ones, like when, I forget the question, but Peter asked Jesus a question, and Jesus didn't have an answer. And he looked past Peter, and he saw the rest of the disciples, and he didn't have an answer. So what did he say? Get thee behind me, Satan. But he didn't say that. Somebody else told that story. All the things we have about Jesus is somebody else's perception of Jesus. Jesus didn't write anything down. Nothing. We don't know what he said. That's what everybody thinks he said, if he was alive at all.
Good question.
So, all right. So are we ready to get back at it?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's talk a little more about mystical experiences. When I say a mystical experience, what comes to mind? And I'll start with Connie this time, if she's able to respond.
What comes to mind?
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
How would you describe a mystical experience?
What I describe? A thought or an emotion that drives me to seek an answer.
Excellent. Excellent. Something that drives you. Not necessarily seek an answer, but something that drives you. How about you, Beth? Mystical experience. What comes to mind when you hear that word? Those words.
Something unexplainable by those around you.
Okay.
unexplainable by and unexplainable to.
Okay, now I'm confused.
You can't explain it in a way to make people kind of sort of experience it through empathy or see that happening in their own head. You know, the pearls before swine. You just can't explain it.
Okay.
You can't explain it. There are no words to explain it to someone who's not in this context.
You had a great word there, empathy. Empathy is an important tool. And I think I've included it somewhere in here, in my outline here. Empathy is an important tool. Empathy is not necessarily getting awash in somebody else's emotions. Empathy is the ability to relate emotionally to another person's experience. And the most common one, or the most common description that comes to mind is you're watching a video and all of a sudden one of the characters says, "Oh no, I'm going to be sick," and they run off. You can feel them heaving. Maybe not quite as pronounced as it's sounding, but you can feel that sensation. You experience that sensation. That's what empathy is. It's all about emotions. And that's what spirituality is about. That's what religion is about, is emotions. Those emotions that you experience. When we go to church, a typical church, not one like this one, but you go to a typical church and you sing hymns. They've got a pattern. Stand up, sit down. Stand up, sit down. Stand up, sit down. You know why they stand up and sit down? It's to stretch your legs. That's why I started telling people, everybody stand up. Because sitting there, you get stiff. They realize that. They expect you to sit there for 2 hours. And if you sit in the same position for 2 hours, you ever watch a video through the single setting, you don't get up for anything? Oh man, and all you do is you want to stretch those legs. You want to stretch it back. Well, they realize this way long time ago. So they have you stand up, sit down. You know what the singing does?
Expands your chest or makes you take in more air.
True, it does that.
Keep you a little more alert.
It does that.
Raises the vibration.
Raises the vibration. And by that, what do they mean?
Oh, induces like a receptivity. Or brings people into a more receptive mind.
More than that. That's part of it. More than that. It's emotional. It's emotional. Church is emotional. Religion is emotional. Spiritualism is emotional. Why? Because that's what moves you to act. So here's a good question for everybody. What determines what is good and what is evil? Or better yet, who determines what is good and what is evil? I think one of our visitors had a lesson on that. I seem to recall editing that or transcribing that. So what are your thoughts about that, Che?
I was confused that day and I still am.
Ah. Okay.
Because to me, anything that harms someone else is not good.
Okay. What about something that harms you?
Not good.
Not good. Why is it
Well,
not good?
Harm, okay, I guess we gotta define harm, but I don't like it.
Well, harm is simply something that makes you uncomfortable. That qualifies. And who makes that determination?
I do.
Exactly. So, if something is good or evil, who makes that determination?
Those in charge.
No.
And it becomes culture.
No.
You do.
What?
You do.
Exactly. You make that determination. You make that determination. Unfortunately, one of the things that religion is notorious about is taking responsibility away from you. But you, in fact, determine what is good or evil. Or, in other terms, the recipient of the act places a value on the act in relation to themselves. So when we look at religion, and religion is typically all about doctrine, the doctrines make this determination. And if not questioned, they become those of others. Doctrines describe what is considered evil and what is good. Of course, the good, they coax us under threat. Imagine that. Religion threatening us. And how do they do that? If you don't do this, you won't go to heaven. If you do it this way, you won't go to nirvana. If you do it that way, you will never get into paradise. That's doctrine. That's doctrine. And it's the doctrine, when people say that religion is about mass control, religion has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. It's the doctrine that does that. Something to keep in mind. So many of the typical religions, well, wait a minute. Anybody have any comments or questions? You're a quiet bunch. So, well, let me see. Looks like Sandy's writing, so I won't pick on her. Connie, what are your thoughts so far?
On what?
Just what we've covered so far.
Oh, well, your religion or your religious interpretation is your responsibility.
Very good. Couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah, it's a very personal experience. It's your responsibility to do with it what needs to be done or needs to be further learned or changes made in your life to affect positive changes in others, etc.
Etc. So, whenever religion causes doubt, according to Connie, it's your job to examine it. And she's right. A prominent evangelist said, and I got this from an article, you can know all about God, but the question is, do you know God? Anybody? Oh, okay. I didn't see any hands. Nobody was willing to step into that. I asked that very same question several years back to a larger group, and they got upset, which was interesting. But, anyway, so, you said yes. So tell us about it.
About my direct connection to God? What are you asking me?
Well,
Do you know God?
do you know
You said
God?
Yes.
I said yes.
Okay. Explain.
Tell us about God.
I was raised Lutheran, so I get what they were talking about. Didn't agree with it from very early on in many ways. So I started questioning, which is what you're talking about. And I have had a whole lot of experiences of guidance, I guess you would say. And I don't know that it's like God talking to me directly or God using others to talk to me, which is probably what I lean towards more. And I just absolutely believe it happens all the time. That's all. So I believe I know God because He kind of directs me, He or she or whatever directs me to a better me in the world.
Excellent. Excellent. Keep at it. Keep at it. As I recall, my hand was up too. So I'm going to share with you my experience. I didn't experience God, but I experienced something. And I first had these experiences, because they're continuing, but my first one that I can recall that made a huge impression on me, I am meditating in my office, and I see this light on the horizon, and it's slowly moving. You don't pay any attention to anything moving like that. When you're meditating, it's just, and then all of a sudden it made let me see here, right turn. I get right left mixed up. All of a sudden it makes a right turn, and boom, it's right there in front of me. Do you know what I did? You know what my first reaction was? Yes!
You screamed like a little girl.
I didn't do that. However, I almost fell backwards out of my chair. That was my first experience. That got my attention. And I knew something was out there. It was fact for me. Something was out there. Didn't know what it was. I knew it wasn't God because it did not fit into the description of God that's what? Described in doctrine. So it wasn't God. It can't be God. If it's not in their doctrine, it can't be God. It was something else. From that moment forward, I started paying more attention to what I was reading, to what I was attempting to do. I had a direction. I want more of this. And when I experience God now, so to speak, it's a conversation. One of those conversations sounded like house. Telling me to focus. You want to get better? Focus. Focus. Same dream over and over and over. It had no choice but to make an impression. Focus. And that's what I did. That's what I learned about focusing how powerful each and every one of you is. You are very powerful. And one of the things that we're going to learn as we put together our tools, so to speak, is just how powerful you can be. Not how powerful you are, but how powerful you can be. Because I'll tell you, sometimes I scare the crap out of myself. Because there's so much power there. You want to experience what that power feels like? All you have to do is stand up here behind the lectern and teach.
No, thank you.
That's part of my purpose.